Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I want to take a minute or two to go over rules for writing scientific papers. So these are general expectations for all scientific writing. It's scientific writing. We don't use personal pronouns. So we write, it's actually first person active voice. And what that means is that we don't use any personal pronouns like I, we, us, them, they have no place in scientific writing. Instead of I put the test tube in the incubator, you would say the test tube was placed in the incubator. Does that make sense? Avoid the word it at all costs. It is not a descriptive word, and you have to be descriptive and specific. Paragraphs should be at least 4 sentences long. I know in English, I think they say a paragraph should be a minimum of 5 sentences long. Sometimes in scientific writing, what you're discussing is really succinct, and 4 might be enough, but certainly never less than 4. Organisms need to be written using proper scientific nomenclature. So remember, humans would look like this, Homo sapiens, or if you've already introduced the full scientific name and you want to abbreviate it later on, you could do the first letter for the genus and then have the full species part. Always in italics. The genus is always uppercase. The species is always lowercase. Don't begin a sentence with an abbreviation. And this includes not starting sentences with an abbreviated genus. Aha! So if you're starting a sentence, you have to use the full genus, okay? Adjectives also have no place in science. For example, you can't quantify or measure good or great, so you shouldn't use it in science. You must include a literature cited at the end of your work. Never include direct quotes for reference, meaning don't use quotation marks. I know in a lot of English papers that's appropriate and encouraged, but for science, that's not the case. You should never directly quote someone. You can use paraphrasing or talk about someone else's work in your writing, and you would use an in-text citation to go with that. So writing a line from one of your sources word for word is plagiarism. But paraphrasing and citing your work is appropriate and good ways to discuss the work of other scientists. You must use in-text citations. And an example of that would be according to Pressler in 2024, right? So that would be a good in-text citation. In-text citations should follow the rules that I outline below. So, for example, here's some scientific tests that text informed by scientific writing somewhere. So you'd cite it here like Pressler et al., 2012. Et al. Is Latin for and others. So if there are more than 2 authors, you list just the first author's last name, like up here, Pressler, and others. So we know there's at least 2 others, and then the year it was published. Okay, keep going through. All right. If there's just a single author, then you just use that one author's last name. If there are 2 authors, like your textbook, if you're in my microbiology class, is Swarthout and Pressler, comma, and then the year. And if there's multiple authors, you'll use just the first author's last name, and then et al. And the year it was published. And none of my students would ever do this, but a friendly reminder that copying work from a student in a previous semester is plagiarism. So is using AI to produce your writing. You may not use any AI-generated text. And I will use an AI checker. Our college's policy on plagiarism can actually result in expulsion from the school. It is way less trouble to just write your paper. But again, none of my students would ever do that. All right, why do we bother to cite in the first place? Well, citations are used to give credit where it's due for scientific discoveries, but it also helps maintain the credibility of the knowledge that you're presenting in your paper. Biologists need to provide literature citations because, like other writers, We have an ethical and legal obligation to give credit to material that's not our own. Plus, it makes you more believable, right? When to cite. The general rule of thumb in scientific writing is to cite any information that's not known to the general public. For example, if your mom doesn't know that E. coli have flagellum and are motile, then you should cite that fact. Any information that's not synthesized, that means created from general knowledge, needs to be cited. And if it is a fact from a resource, you need to paraphrase the information and cite your source. Plagiarism is the theft of someone else's words, work, or ideas. This includes turning in another student's paper, using another person's data or ideas, copying an author's exact words and putting them in your paper without quotation marks. But of course, we're not using any direct quotes anyways in scientific writing. Or using wording that's very similar to an original source, but passing it off entirely as your own, even if you acknowledge that the source is there. And then I'm going to add on here 5, submitting writing that was generated with the use of AI. Your writing needs to be your own. You're a student. You need to learn how to write. All right, acceptable text sources include the textbook, maybe other relevant books in the field like Bergey's Manual of Systematic Bacteriology, your lab manual, periodicals and scientific journals. Those would all be good ones. Acceptable web resources would be things that end with .gov or .edu. And then here's some lists of very credible sources. Websites that are not acceptable are .coms, .orgs, and especially never Wikipedia. All right, and as always, if you have any questions, you're not sure if something's cited properly, just let me know and I will help you figure it out. Thank you for watching.